Hello and welcome to the Educators podcast. I am Vishal Bagaita, the founder of Educatool and your host for this podcast. Educatool is an online marketplace where students can get access to video courses, downloadable documents and tutors to help them study for their exams. The Educators podcast is an opportunity for you to learn more about what goes into creating the learning resources on the website. You can hear more about our latest resources and discounts by registering today at educatool.com and signing up to the newsletter. In our fifth episode, we are joined by Arian Mirzarafie Ahi, a PhD dropout and biology enthusiast. Listen in as Arian tells us about the story behind the creation of the A Level Biologist courses. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Hello, Arian. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Educators podcast. Please, could you tell me a bit more about yourself and provide a bit of insight into your background, please?
Hello, Vishal. Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure. My name is Arian Mirzarafie Ahi. A bit about my background. I graduated from Birkbeck, University of London, in biological sciences, and then started a PhD at UCL and King's College London that I eventually dropped out of, and have been working in science communication and education as a freelancer. I've been assessing pupil work for the British Science Association, and of course growing my own platform, which is the A Level Biologist, your hub.
Great. Okay. And you talked about obviously pursuing a PhD there. So I'm really interested to sort of know a bit more about your passion for the subject and try and understand a bit more about why you decided to pursue it as far as you did.
So the story with my relationship with biology really starts quite early on because I always had an attraction towards it, but without realizing it. And I kind of absorbed it quite easily in school. And I was getting quite high grades. So I thought, this is something I'm quite good at. But I thought what I really liked was actually psychology. So I did that at A levels. And in the first year, I got my grades back and I got a B in psychology and like a really high A in biology. So I thought, I didn't really think much of it, but I thought it was a bit odd that I wanted to do psychology, but that wasn't really my highest grade. I almost applied to do psychology at uni. And then I just kind of sat down and I thought, do I really want to do this? What if I end up, being a counselor or talking to people about their psychological needs or their problems? And I thought, I don't think I want to do that. So I thought, you know what, why don't I just do something else? So I looked at my application and I thought, I've got the highest grades out of all my subjects, which were psychology, biology, chemistry, and English language and literature. The highest one was biology. And I thought, maybe that's trying to tell me something. So I thought, I'll just apply for biology. I'll do that. And later on, I just got more into the research side of things, more into really doing things that seem insane with science, tackling aging, changing the way we can live our lives, the limitations of our bodies. And even obviously psychology itself, a lot of it is very much entrenched with biology. And, we have more and more of mental health and physical health being treated holistically together. So a little bit of that psychology interest is very much still present in biology. In fact, I've seen in some of the specifications that they actually include a lot of stuff on the brain, speech, language, social behavior, and stuff like that. So there's definitely quite a lot of overlap there. So I started doing internships during my degree, research. I was very much into the lab research stuff because that's something that you don't really get to do in school much. And it's something quite mysterious. You might kind of be aware of the concept of science, but how much science do you get to really do, to really see, to really be in the midst of it? I found that fascinating. So I did a few internships. I was doing molecular biology, even bioinformatics on the computer, really starting to get into the various interdisciplinary aspects of research. And I really loved my experiences during the PhD course that I dropped out of. In the first year, actually, I got to do 3 different projects, and I loved, just trying out 3D printing, growing stem cells, using all sorts of lab technology, and just mingling with scientists and innovators in the UK and abroad.
Wow. Sounds like a wealth of experience you've managed to gather over the years.
Yeah, and that was actually a very conscious thing, because I wasn't sure I was going to find a project that I wanted to complete as a PhD, but I knew that I wanted to just know more about the various things that were going on. So I thought, what is the most diverse group of experiences that I can possibly get? And I thought, you know what? I've never done 3D printing. I'm going to do that. I don't really know how stem cells work. I'm going to do that. I'm just going to travel, and that's what I did. So that was very enjoyable, and I realized that a lot of the people that do those things don't necessarily, because you keep wanting to progress, you don't necessarily stop and then look back and think, oh, actually, why don't I tell people about this so that it's not only my benefit, but everyone's benefit, is maximized as much as possible.
Sure. So do you mean that you started creating resources in parallel with some of these other experiences, or was it a conscious decision to say, okay, I've now got these experiences and now it's time to share?
The whole process was happening over quite a long span of time. So I actually started creating the resources through the A Level Biologist in the second year of my A levels. I was 19. So at that point, I hadn't really acquired any of those experiences beyond just the first year of biology A level. That was it. So it started fairly basic. And then once I was sort of finishing up my degree in London and, starting a PhD, I just thought, I slowly just added more resources and created more videos. And then after dropping out of the PhD with this added perspective and experiences, looking back on those resources, I thought, well, there's so much more value that can be added to this. That is the basic stuff required for, just getting your qualification, and then the other things that are potentially more interesting or potentially related to your career. And that was definitely the theme of me doing my degree. And of course, I didn't 100% like every single module that I did during my degree. It was just a structured, disciplined thing to do just for the sake of broadening your knowledge, not necessarily out of pure passion. And then combining that with these extra work experiences, because for most of these work experiences, you had to be on a degree program to apply. So these two things kind of just went hand in hand, where the degree opens up certain doors. You do have to go out of your way to get those doors to open, but the degree is kind of your launch pad to those things. And then also those things actually create your network and give you other opportunities that the degree alone wouldn't give you. So really they just went hand in hand. And I think at this point they are pretty enmeshed. And that's why, there's also a podcast element to the A Level Biologist content, where hopefully it makes it somewhat more entertaining, somewhat more connected to the real world, as well as, satisfying the specification requirements and the more disciplined side of things.
Mm-hmm. And actually, it's good that you brought up the podcast because, as you say, it adds a bit more color to what's covered in the specification. Are you just trying to quiz people on things that you're interested in learning about when you create your podcast episodes? Is it just a case of learning more about topics that excite you?
So there's a few sort of common threads throughout the podcast episodes that are essentially definitely giving the opportunity for each guest to highlight their main expertise, their main selling point, if you will. And I know some of them personally. So I definitely think, oh, everyone should hear about this great thing that this person is doing, or everyone should hear this anecdote. And then also having some common thread themes that I think the audience might be interested in learning about. And these common thread themes are, what was this person's education? How did they get to have a relationship with science? How did they get into science? What were some things that surprised them? Just insider information, insights that people, wouldn't be aware of. Because I think there's a lot of, fascinating stuff and interesting experiences that scientists have, the researchers have, and because it's quite a sort of inward-facing community, because research has to be inward-facing in terms of, just being very focused with detail and very committed over quite a long time. So, of course, it has the energy of being inward-looking. It can be quite difficult to then kind of step back and say, oh, actually, what am I doing? And how does this relate to people who have no idea about it? So I think it's very valuable to, as an outsider almost, as a sort of an outsider who was an insider, or someone, let's say a messenger who's kind of going in and out of this sphere, to connect the people who are inside of it to the people who aren't.
It sounds fascinating, to be honest with you, because I think having the ability to tell those stories and help excite the next generation is actually a valuable thing. So I can see how this podcast would, simply aid those who are already interested in the subject. So it sounds very interesting. And just sort of bring it back to the specification led resources that you have created. So obviously, you've created some A Level biology courses. We've got the AQA one up on the site with some of the other exam boards to come. I want to understand a bit more about the process for creating these resources, because what you've created is something which is largely text-based, but you've got lots of diagrams to help illustrate the point. And then you've also got some videos as well to, further illustrate the points that you're making. In terms of leading with text as the primary medium for your resources, and how you sort of go about getting the balance between being concise versus not losing the detail, because clearly you've got a lot of detail within you from all the experiences that you have. It'd be good to understand a bit more about your journey creating these resources.
Yes. So there's something lasting and incorruptible about text, and I think it was my talent, really. I'm not a great visual artist. I can't really draw that well. So text has always been my strong point. I never really realized it's one of those skills that is not really highlighted. No one kind of tells you, oh, well, you just write well, or you read well. So you kind of go through a number of different jobs, and then at one point you think, oh, I've just been doing quite a lot of writing, or I've just been doing a lot of editing, and you think, maybe this is something I'm good at. Especially, obviously, with the science background, it's difficult to kind of say exactly what goes into it, because there's so many things that go into it. But I realize now that for me, that type of writing and teaching is definitely something that I enjoy and that I've been quite good at. And it is the best way for me to convey my insights to other people. I think when you read, someone else's mind temporarily occupies yours. So text allows my insights to kind of be encoded into as many people's minds as possible, because biology has so much terminology and is quite complex for some of the topics. So I think a clean medium is very important to allow students to kind of process this complex information. And of course, diagrams are essential as well. And videos can illustrate dynamic concepts. But I think in order to fully own the knowledge, text, I think, is the best way.
Sure. And you mentioned sort of editing as part of the process. Is that something that you have to sort of really spend time on to get it to the level that where you're happy with the content?
I think for some of the editing that I've done, I've read something maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and I can always spot an error. So there's a lot more potential for improving things all of the time than there initially seems to be. So there is a balance between just doing it and trying to do it, 100% right. But I think for me, the primary focus in writing it was definitely following the specifications and really, combing through, every single sentence, because the specifications are, they're broken up by topic, and then each topic has a series of, sentences or points that you need to cover. And even down to the specific terms, some specifications want students to know a certain term for something, a certain little tweak, a little nook and cranny, a little detail that maybe another specification doesn't care about. So I basically spent, I think it was about 6 months going through all of the different specifications. And it's just quite simple, just literally manually just going through all of them. And I think after I printed a few of them, I thought, wow, why am I doing this? I just looked through all these tens and hundreds of pages. It's very frustrating. It's actually easier to write, brand new topics from scratch. What was really challenging was trying to adapt the very, very similar topics and the very, very similar content that was not exactly copy paste 100% identical, but it was like 80% identical, 95% identical, and really just making sure that, that little word is the right way, or that angle, or that feature, or that sentence. So that was really, challenging. But again, I took the challenge. I thought, I'll do it. I enjoy it. I'm good at it. I think there's a need for it. One of the things that was difficult, I thought, when I was doing my levels, was just the sense of just being alone in the specific challenge of learning this content to specification. So that's what I tried to tackle.
That makes sense. And there is a lot of effort that goes behind the scenes, obviously, to get the content to the quality that you've wanted. So I think that would be definitely appreciated by your students. And it'd be interesting to hear some of the feedback that you've got from students or teachers.
Yeah, I got so much feedback that even today I go back to some of the some of the videos or some of the places where people have written comments, and I think, oh, I haven't spotted that one. Oh, I didn't realize that person wrote that. So I feel like I definitely don't have the full handle on every single thing that people have said. But I've been very, very grateful to find the positive comments the students have given my content over time. And I think one of the common threads is the clarity and the simplicity of the content. There was one review in particular that just, stuck with me. And that's like my favorite review that I, if I have to share a review, I go to that one because it describes the whole thing really well. And it shows exactly what I was trying to achieve with this. So it was confirmation for me that I succeeded in doing that. And it went something like this. It said, I don't know why, but everything you wrote soaks straight into my brain. I remember everything you've written. For some reason, it's soaked straight into my brain. And I thought, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to hijack your brain and make you understand biology. Mission accomplished. So that was my favorite review. And I think there's something very subtle about that, because especially with technology and using technology in education, it's very, very easy to overwhelm the experience of learning with just something that's really good looking or really fun to do. But it's a lot more subtle to just master the basic art, let's say, of just making someone understand something, or making a subject accessible and explaining it in a way that just makes sense. It's invisible. It's hard to know whether someone has understood what they've just read. But I think a lot of the reviews revolve around this specific function of having that aha moment of having struggled to really wrap your head around something, and then finally thinking, what, actually, this is not that difficult. I get it now.
I think that's very valuable feedback, and it's always good to see that your objective has been achieved when you get such direct feedback like that. In terms of the proceeds that are generated from people buying your courses, I noticed that you obviously support some charities. So you've listed Greenpeace, East Anglian Air Ambulance, ActionAid UK, and UNICEF UK. I'd like to understand a bit more about how you came about choosing these particular charities.
So they came fairly naturally because I've been supporting them, and I learned more about them over a longer period of time. And they, then I realized, because these are things that I care about, and I realized they have quite a lot of overlap with, themes of environmental protection, social equality, supporting vulnerable people, and it just made sense to really align those things. And I can, I know that students feel strongly about those things as well. In fact, over the past year alone, the proportion of student projects about the environment has absolutely skyrocketed from a minority of them to now literally almost all of them. So it's quite it's quite stark, and it makes sense. If you're going to study life science and have a career in this, it is for people, it is for the environment, it is for the advancement of science. So this alignment is quite natural, I thought. And I want people to feel like they're also part of that, because that's really what it is about for me.
Excellent. I think that's very noble. And I think you're right. It does align with some of the objectives you've spoken about before as well. So excellent to hear about your journey, Arian. I'm really excited to have you on board our journey on Educator. So thanks very much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much, Vishal.
So, what did you think? It was great to hear about Arian's desire for a variety of experiences in order to learn, as well as the passion for the subject of biology. I hope that Arian's insight into getting resources aligned to the different exam board specifications was informative, and has inspired you to create your own learning resources. If you are interested in uploading these materials to Educator, please do reach out via the website contact form, social media, or a trusted email to info@educator.com. You will also find information about getting started on Educator in the guidance part of the website. Don't forget that you can find links to Arian's courses in the show notes and the social media posts that accompany the release of this episode. There is also some sample content that is free to view, so do check it out. If you've got this far, thank you very much for listening. Arian and I were based in different parts of the country, so we recorded this through Zoom. I hope it sounded clear to you. Finally, the last message, please do like and share the podcast.